Hi everyone, this is Dr. Tracy McCarthy, psychologist, attorney, and educator. We're going to be talking about the Crusades and the destruction of Indigenous fathers and sons. And as we embark upon this very brief discussion, a question for you to consider is, who were your grandfathers? Who was the grandfather of your grandmother on your mother's side? If you've been identifying yourself as American Indian and specifically as Choctaw, this is a question for you to consider because what appears based upon some cultural and linguistic evidence that is emerging is that there was an attempt to destroy the indigenous males in the Americas, in the area known as the United States of America specifically. And there appears to have been a significant replacement of those fathers and sons during the time period known as settling, colonizing, crusading, and so forth. And so we're going to look at a couple of linguistic dynamics that point to this issue. You have a significant social engineering dynamic going on here, and this is a very long con, apparently. And you have an erasure of a group of people. And it's not clear at this point if the names that are being used for these people, the languages that are being attributed to these people, it's not clear that any of this is actually true. There was a pattern of people, entire tribes, ethnic groups disappearing upon contact with so-called settlers. The evidence is pointing towards ethnic cleansing. The evidence is pointing towards genocide. One of the reasons why these conversations are difficult and why the research is difficult is because a significant amount of the research, a significant amount of the theory, is being provided by those who are the descendants of what you would consider the destroyers. So sometimes there is a conflict of interest between their indigenous ancestors and their conquering and colonizing ancestors. And so they have a conflict, and they have decided to resolve the conflict in favor of the destroying ancestors. So let's get started with this discussion. And so I want to bring to your attention the social engineering campaign and give you some food for thought and some constructs to consider with respect to how social engineering proceeds. And so you had some religious dynamics going along with this. Now, it's not clear if these religious dynamics were authentic religious dynamics or if these religious dynamics were simply part of the pretext and the ethnic cleansing. So you had a pretext with the so-called settlers, colonizers, where there was a theme of being lost or in need of assistance, and then assistance being provided, and then what would be considered the double cross. In the context of all of this, you had an ethnic cleansing campaign. So you had the identities of the original males stolen, and in some instances the females too, but this was primarily a male focused ethnic cleansing. And so you had the identity theft, you had the land theft that went along with this, and then you had a real-time deepfake. And deepfake is usually referring to digital sort of pretending to be someone that someone is not, or manipulating things to make it look as if someone is someone when they are not. In this case, you have an entire group of people who have been replaced by another group of males. Some of these males are similar in terms of their genetic makeup, and there are some elements of diversity also. And so you've got an ethnic cleansing campaign where the original fathers of the land are no longer the fathers of the land. You still have many of the mothers of the land, apparently, which might account for so much matrilineal focus, because that may be the only way that you can tell who was originally here. And so you have this ethnic cleansing campaign of the grandfathers. That's what we will call them, the grandfathers, because that's what's going on here. So some of your grandfathers are missing, if this is part of your identity, and some of those grandfathers have been replaced by other grandfathers. And so you have this real-time deepfake going on, and you have a destruction of male DNA and an exchange for another male DNA. And this is all a part of the identity theft. So you have the social engineering campaign, you have the pretexting, you have ethnic cleansing and identity theft, which of course went along with the land theft, the deepfake, the destruction, and the exchange. And it appears that there is perhaps afoot another process where there will be additional exchanging going on. And so this is just something to consider if you are in other indigenous ethnic groups. It's something to consider. If you are really looking honestly and trying to better understand your ancestry, your history, the history of this country, the history of this world, then you will give this some serious consideration. So to start off, we're just going to revisit this Choctaw lexicon that we looked at before. And as you recall, it was the Choctaw in English definition. And so this was for the Choctaw academies and schools. This is a very interesting dynamic written back in the 1800s by someone named Alan Wright. Now here is the first red flag that was noted in this particular piece of literature, is that the people for whom this dictionary of sorts was created, the creators of this dictionary of sorts, the identification they have given themselves, the definition they have given themselves is basically nothing. And so the definition presumably by the Choctaw or the Choctaw of themselves is that the meaning of their name, the original meaning, is lost. They have no idea what it means, but it's supposed to mean a separation, meaning a separation from the Creeks and Seminoles who were once of one tribe. This makes absolutely no sense. And so you have a group of people who are going by a particular name, and according to this, this name has no real meaning other than perhaps separation. Then you have additional information with the descendant of the Choctaws, the Choctaw being the descendant of the Choctaws. Again, this is a very odd dynamic, and this is pretty consistent. Numerous dictionaries have been examined in order to get a better understanding of the self-definition of the people who are identified as Choctaw and Choctaw, and this clarity has not been made evident. What is also noted is that this name is noted in some other places around the world, and that is noteworthy. This name also has a religious significance. And so there are a couple of concerns with this name and it being attached to some settler dynamics and colonizer dynamics. And so it could be a situation, appears to be a situation, where the colonizers are doing the naming. And it also appears that whoever the people are who are being identified as Choctaw, that their actual original names have been lost. Their names have been replaced with these names. And so some people will feel offended by that because they've been holding on to this identity. However, if they had been doing their due diligence, they would already know this. And we're going to move on to what is known as the complete Choctaw definer. And this is English with Choctaw definitions. This one is written by a Ben Watkins. Interestingly, all of these Scottish Scots, English, Irish, German, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, names identifying as the Choctaw and the Choctaw and the Chickasaw, and it goes on and on. And so we decided to do a little bit of research in this additional source. And what was noted was that there is no Choctaw word at all in this particular source. So this is the Choctaw Complete Definer, and it does not even include self in the list of definitions. And so you can see where it should be placed, and it is not located there. And so what you see here is more of the same. In terms of alternatives, the word Choctaw was examined, and that attempt at examination failed because that word also did not exist in the book that is purportedly written by the people, for the people, about the people.
Fall for the lies and join the dividing lines that keep us fighting amongst it.
So what we also did was we looked for the other spelling of Choctaw to see if that might be available. And of course, without surprise, it was not available. Not only was it not available in this particular resource, it was not found in any of the more ancient resources delineating the so-called Choctaw language. What was noted, however, which was very odd, was that other groups of people were identified. And so you had Africans, and you had Lusa, and you had other groups of people, German and French. So you had all these other groups of people, but no actual definition for self. So there was plenty of attention paid to who would be considered the colonizers, the settlers, and their identities. But the actual group of people for whom this particular resource was purportedly created, there is nothing to define who they are. Now, what's also noteworthy, and we can talk about this in another setting, is that this name Choctaw or Choctaw also has a religious meaning in certain languages, and it's not particularly positive. And so the question remains, is this actually the name that the people had for themselves, or is this the name that the colonizers, crusaders, settlers, is this the name that was applied to the people as a part of the justification of the stealing of the homes and the stealing of the identities, apparently the stealing of the names? And so is that what this is all about? Is that the people are pretty much lost? The grandparents were pretty much lost because they had been given a name that was perhaps not even their own. So as we wrap this up, what we have is a real stealing home dynamic. And these dynamics are continuing and escalating, as a matter of fact. And so for those of you who are interested in pursuing the truth about this history, you are definitely encouraged to start some dialogue about it. It seems very convoluted, but there have to be some answers because you have all of these documents that indicate a lack in terms of referencing. And you also have what appears to be a deficit in the language. If you are not defining yourself in your own language, it seems a little odd that you would be defining others. There are also the dynamics related to the Y haplogroup that serve as a giveaway regarding what took place. And so some people have tried to justify this by suggesting that this is the real old world, and the old world is the new world. In other words, the East is the West and the West is the East. If you can even identify an East and a West when you're talking about something that's supposed to be a ball shape. At any rate, if anyone would like to have this discussion, if you've been doing some research on this and you have some content up where you've been exploring this and you would like to have a dialogue about this, that would be a possibility. So if that is the case, let me know and we can pursue that dialogue. One thing to keep in mind is that there are conflicts of interest going on, and a great deal of the information that people appear to be receiving, sort of this deluge of information that is available on the internet, also appears to be perhaps socially engineered, and so some of it may not be real. Even some of the content that has been available that we have reviewed, there are questions about it. There are questions about why would it suddenly appear, and there are also questions about how it suddenly appeared and who is presenting the information and how they came to have that information, why that information is so important to them, because in some instances the information does not apply to the individuals who are presenting the information, or at least it does not appear to apply to the individuals who are presenting, sharing the information. And so there are a number of questions out there. Hopefully you have some answers. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.
Ones who died along the way, to those who carried on traditions and never find, to those that turn away the so-called together, and to those living outside, who live and fight the struggles of their people, do not care, to those who abuse themselves and others, and those